time management, first thing I would do is make sure I can get to the ground on the right time, and then all the logistical things. So have I got the right kit and equipment sorted, from a grassroots perspective? Have I checked the pitch? So those kind of things would be the first things that I would do on a match day. Hello and welcome to Coaching Cards. I'm Nimesh and I'm joined by Jonathan and Geoff, and today we're going to have a chat about how coaches can manage the match day. What's the first thing coaches should do on a match day? Jonathan, I'll come to you first.
I think the key thing initially is just planning out what your expectations are of the day, the focus area that you're looking to mainly zoom in on. And maybe that will be a complement of training, it might be around some principles of the way you play. And then planning your team from there to support them with their development and support them with the focus of the game, really.
It starts in the planning stage, and it depends on the focus and the age and stage of your players. But really, do you think about planning for match minutes, for your team style, what messages you're going to speak about, how involved will the players be in terms of a player-led or a player-centred approach? And that doesn't just happen on the match day. I think that's the stuff that you talk about in the sessions, which helps you come to a match day with them prepared and ready. Based on both those answers, I probably looked at it probably just on the morning of getting up. So I thought, time management, first thing I would do is make sure I can get to the ground on the right time. And then all the logistical things. So have I got the right kit and equipment sorted, from a grassroots perspective? Have I checked the pitch? So those kind of things would be the first things that I would do on a match day.
How should coaches behave on match day? I think it's that thing of recognising what you're going for and then recognising and identifying the behaviours that are best going to complement what you're going after. It might link to the style of play that you've got or some key principles of the way you play. And I think linking that also into the values of the club that you're working for as well, and just making sure that there's a complementary element to what you're going after and the values of the club.
So for me, I look at these young players that we work with, and they sort of look up to us. We're like a role model to them. So the behaviours that we have and what we display on a game day is what we want the young players to actually grow up to have at the same time. So linking to the values like you mentioned there around respect and having some things that you are part of your own personal beliefs that you want the players to be good people in general. Are we aligned to what the FA stance is, and just making sure that we're displaying a good image on the touchlines as we want the players to act as well. There's a good expression that the team is a reflection of the coach. So I think often you will see a team behave in a certain style if the coach mirrors that as well. And I think you're dead right, the respect one is really important, that the coach behaviour, if they start to get on at the ref, the players think that is licensed to do the same. However the decisions go with you or against you, you need to be neutral in youth football and in football in general. So something that links to the measuring of coach behaviours is the non-verbal communication. So there's something called the Morabian formula, which relates to how we say things, but the body language and the tone of what we say. And players pick up on that. So I think something like less than 10% of our information is verbal, but gestures and tone can convey a lot of information. If you're calm on the touchline with your voice and your gestures, then that again will rub off on your players. But even just things like throwing your arms in the air, turning away, the subs will pick up on it, and some of the players will feel and see that. So I think those hidden gestures, we need to make coaches conscious of it as well. I think it's also important that we show that enthusiasm, especially for young players in the grassroots game, that when there's something going really well, that we applaud it and show them that this is some good behaviours at the same time.
It's interesting to see how coaches link the position that they're in the game to their behaviours. So as an example, if your focus area has been around some patient possession stuff during the week and that's what you've been working towards, and on the match day you're demonstrating some real enthusiasm on the touchline, tone of voice is really high, speed is really, really quick in the way you're portraying stuff, and the ball keeps going out of play, it might be a moment where you need to kind of recognise a different behaviour, maybe step back a little bit, demonstrate a calm body language, which may actually slow down the tempo of the game. So I think behaviours are also linked to what you're trying to encourage them to do.
I think the other thing about behaviours is when we look at the information that coaches give, there's an interesting way to view that. Is it a before action piece of information? So are you coaching someone before they've received the ball, or are you coaching them on the ball or after the action that they've done? And often what coaches will do, I would call it joystick coaching, where they often comment on the player on the ball, pass, shoot, dribble, turn, it's 1v1. But actually those are making the decisions for the players. So actually leaving the player on the ball to make his or her own decisions, I think, is really powerful. If we want independent decision makers, we have to let them make decisions and make good or not so good decisions and learn from that in the game. So how can coaches manage their players' behaviour on a match day?
On a match day, you've got to take a sense of a moment that there is a little bit of pressure and those nerves that players have. So I think it's okay that players come to the game day with that and have a little bit of that energy that might be a little bit too high, or it might sometimes be a little bit too low, and we might have to just give them 5 or 10 minutes where they come into the changing room, as an example, and just let them get that out. Sometimes what you'll find is, especially in the grassroots game, is some of these players may not have seen each other all week. So then when they get there, rather than me wanting to start a team talk, you might just have to give them 5 minutes to just have a chat with each other, see how they are. And that can help bring their nerves down, and it can help their own behaviours before we actually go out onto the pitch. But I think another way of managing the behaviour is just setting some roles for the players. So when the players are coming in for a game day or a training session, a couple of them might be tasked with, can you help me set out this area? Can you two go and do this? And during the session, giving jobs and giving roles and responsibilities out not only helps them with their life skills in general, but it helps refocus some of their behaviours that might be a little bit too high or too low, gives them something to do while they're there.
One of the other things, just adding to that as well, I think, is that co-creation piece around what the behaviours look like. I think if you can share that with, players, and they can come up with them for themselves around what their behaviours, what they perceive their behaviours should be on a match day that will complement their game experience, their match experience. I think there you're getting a shared kind of vision of what you want your behaviours to look like in game.
And actually then it's the decision of how player-led or how player-centred are we. So as you've said, what do you want them to lead on and you support them with? But actually empowering the players to run stuff and support you, I think, can be very powerful as well.
I've found it a lot when I've worked with some non-league teams is if the standard isn't quite right in a session, sometimes the players portraying the behaviour to get the rest of the teammates up for the practice or making those decisions by giving some ownership to them is more impactful than me as the coach saying to the players, this might need to be a bit better, or can we do this better?
I think they're really good points. I think it just helps align everybody, and it's a shared between them then, isn't it? It's something that they've come up with, it's something they're taking responsibility for, and it means more to them as a group.
Okay, next question. How should coaches manage mistakes in the game? I think for me here, the word mistake is really important. So is it actually an error? Is it a mistake? For me, if a player does something wrong, I'm going to give them a couple of opportunities to see if it happens again. If it forms a bit of a pattern, then it might be a mistake. If it happens just once, it might be an error, and that's okay. Players even at the professional game will make errors during a game, so we can't be too critical on players, especially from grassroots. So for me, what I'd like to do is give players like a hat-trick rule, I call it, give them 3 opportunities. If I see something taking place 3 times, then it's an opportunity to go in and give them some support. So if, as an example, a player is getting beat every single time in a 1v1, it might be that I can provide some support to them around, actually, how is that player beating you? So can I give some support to the player to say, have you looked at your scanning or your timing before? Is it your positioning of your body that might help them? But it's okay, and I think coaches listening into this need to appreciate that mistakes are part of the game, and it's okay to see mistakes in football.
The thing that stands out for me is recognising what the intention was. I think that's a really key thing. So, praising intentions or recognising intentions will probably increase the opportunity that they'll probably try and find a different way or try and find a way of getting success next time. Then just recognising understanding your players, I think it is, and recognising, okay, well, how might they want to receive this feedback? Do I go and interact with them around what they feel like they're noticing about the problem they're faced with? Do they want me to provide them with some options, or do they want me to provide them with some challenges that might allow them to overcome that situation or have more opportunities to go at that situation again? If your reaction to a mistake is very similar to a reaction when things go pretty well, or you're focused on the positive, there's a likelihood that feedback is going to be received in a positive way by the player.
And I think it's how we reframe mistakes and the word mistakes. I think they're accidents, and they're actually then learning opportunities. and we have the choice of whether or not we intervene, but actually what you've got in the player's head is their own internal feedback first. So if it's a shot that they've missed, they're replaying that over in their head in the next 10, 20 seconds. So it's then their focus is on the next action after that. But actually sometimes we don't need to interrupt that internal feedback process and leave them alone with it. So I think that's important, actually, just to leave them alone, because what they don't need really is a coach shouting across, oh, you should have got your head over the ball or hit the target, some messages like that. Let the player have that mistake or have that moment, and then later on you might pick it up with a question rather than, oh, you should have got your head over the ball, but actually on that shot, what happened, what was going on? And they will really probably be able to verbalise it and self-correct, I think, as well.
What can coaches do to ensure their whole team enjoys the matchday experience?
I think it's just making sure that they're involved, whether you're starting that game or that period of the game. Understanding that they have the freedom to go and explore that game and enjoy their learning experience within it, but also recognising that those players that are resting on the side still have something within the game that they're focusing on and they're still valued at that moment in time. It might be that they're supporting a teammate in a position that for me as a resting player is a real super strength, but for my friend who's playing in that position might be a bit of a challenge position for them. So actually it might be that I'm utilised to support my teammate in that moment and give them encouragement throughout the game. I think ultimately it's just making sure that everybody feels valued, whether they're starting the game, whether they're resting for a period of the game, but just making sure that they've got a focus point and a value.
There's a really big philosophical question here about formats and minutes and game time. So if the games kick off on Sunday at 11 o'clock, why can't every player be starting the game in some format? So I guess there is more flexibility in academy football where teams can do a 7 and a 4-a-side or 2 6s based on the numbers on the day. But yeah, really, when I look sometimes at the number of players sat on the sideline, it can be a lot across 3 or 4 games on a site for a lot of players who aren't starting a game. And we really have to look at that question of, can we not just adapt the formats to get more players playing more of the time? Because that's the biggest learning for them.
For me, it's that enjoyment factor is you as the coach also showing on your body language in terms of your own enjoyment. That will feed off into the players in terms of how are they enjoying the game at the same time. There's also an element of being realistic or setting realistic parameters before the fixture. So maybe not so much in the grassroots game, maybe more towards the talent and the senior game. It may be, are we realistic around the opposition or where we may be in terms of what our outcomes are for this fixture? So it may be that we've lost the game 10-0, but actually we've had 4 opportunities where we've played out from defence to midfield, and that's the enjoyment, that's the success we're going to celebrate. But then also opportunities during the game, if an opposition player has done something really well, that we celebrate it, or at the end of the game, going round and giving a high five to the players and 3 cheers that you see in grassroots football for the opposition, making sure that there's an enjoyment level for everyone taking part at that moment in the game.
At the end of the game, coaches can often do a generic review, team talk for everyone. One of the things that I've liked and I've seen some coaches do is a reconnection with every player. So something we used to do at the club I worked in, we would get each player one-to-one with the coach just to say something they've done well today, something they're going to go away and think about or work on. And it creates a really good focus on individual, irrespective of the result. It allows the player to the person to self-reflect and talk to the coach. And it allows the coach to have a great connection back and probably add another positive where it may be, and I also enjoyed the way you made forward runs. So it's just a nice individual connection, and with a squad size and coach numbers, that can often happen on the walk back to the dressing room or just as you're packing things away as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's really cool. It's really nice. There's so many different ways that you can reframe what success looks like in a game situation and make it bespoke to the young people that you're working with. And I think it's a really good point. Do you have any top tips to help coaches approach team talks on a match day?
I'm interested in how much do the players lead on these sorts of things. Is it player first, player last, or is it player first, player middle, player last? I think the other interesting thing that we haven't spoken about already is a coach can set out the objectives. So in the planning bit, we've been working on finish the attack, trying to score goals, but actually the game starts and we realise we're not getting much success in that area. My personal view is I think we need to help players with in-game management. So the objectives actually might go out of the window, because actually the real game problem is playing out in front of us, and they might need help or a discussion on what's going on in front of them.
For me, from a grassroots lens, it's actually just providing a couple of points before. So if it's pre-game or half-time, trying to limit it to 2 or 3 points. If I can stick to a couple of things, and something that I've seen a lot of grassroots coaches do now is the coach might give 2 things before the game, and the players can say, right, this is one thing we want to go after in the game. Get them on board with the game plan. It becomes an easier team talk where they can then feed back after the quarters or at half time.
Yeah, I think from a female talent pathway perspective, I think when you've got coaching teams that might be inclusive of goalkeeper coach, co-coach, coaching team, I think there's probably 3 things to kind of recognise really is what are the priorities that you're going after, because I think that when you've got so many, when you've got a coaching team, it comes from a really good place, but everybody wants to offer their value and support, and it comes from a really good place because they care. But it's just recognising what are you going to prioritise, and then recognise who's going to say it, I think, and who's going to say it and when. So is it the players that are going to interact with it? Is it is it one of the other coaching team? But just recognise who's going to say it, and then just recognise how it's going to be said. So is there going to be some open questions that are going to open up opportunity for the players to give their feedback? Is it moments where they're recognising might need to provide some options or solutions? But I think just pre that conversation, and you notice that there's a number of clubs that do it now, when you see players going off the pitch at half time and coaching teams staying pitch side for a short while, that moment of just recognising what are we going to talk about, who's going to say it, how are we going to say it, I think is really key, so that you don't get that kind of information overload that comes from a really good place because they want to help.
Yeah, I think to sort of conclude some of the great points there, I think it's around being clear on what you want to go after, not going after too many things, but then having that flexibility, like you said, to the game problem itself. We've got to address that and help the players with it at the same time. So there's probably a little bit of both. We don't want to be too structured because we want the players to be able to problem solve. But if there's an opportunity where we can help, then we need to help them with some of the game problems as well.
Yeah. I think the final point on it, I quite like the expression less is more.